I'm Chuck Morris. I You can't say no to Katie. She looks innocent and nice, but she could be a stickler. Um, I didn't want to write something and then read it, but I'm in marketing, and so going off script's pretty easy for me. So in the interest of everyone's time, I figured I would write it out more like an essay, and I'll go off script if I need to. Um, my essay's entitled "In Praise of Quiet Mercies," and I'm opening with a Bible verse, John 1:14-16, which I'm sure many of us have read this season, but it's the last part of this year. So the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, glory of the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is he of whom I said, he who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me." And here's the verse 16. From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace upon grace. The last part is added. So close your eyes for me. Take a deep breath. That's really for me. Picture Knoxville before the skyline we have now, before the interstate loops, before Market Square had its storefronts and restaurants, and yes, right now, an ice rink. On the corner of State Street near Turnip Patch, owned by James White, founder of Knoxville, a small congregation gathered in 1792. Barely a year, mind you, after Tennessee became not a state, but a territory. Because human beings have always needed a place to lay down their worries and pick up a little courage. That gathering became First Presbyterian Church of Knoxville, the oldest church in the city, and in many ways, it has spent more than 2 centuries practicing the art of quiet mercies. The church's story isn't a sequence of triumphal marches. It's more like an Appalachian ballad, steady, persistent, textured with longing and hope. And when I think of that, I think of Appalachian Spring, Copeland's Appalachian Spring. Through wars, fires, epidemics, oppressions, and the prickly business of civic growth, the congregation kept assembling, breath by breath, prayer by prayer, a sort of living testament to the truth that grace isn't a fireworks show. Grace is a long obedience in the same direction, as Eugene Peterson put it. And again, grace after grace after grace. When the current sanctuary was built in 1903, and this is around that period, this is from the Library of Congress, the architects gave the city more than a building. They gave it an acoustical hush, the kind that wraps around you the way grandmother's quilt does. Step inside on a weekday when there's no choir rehearsing and no Sunday bustling, and the room holds a particular kind of silence. I'm sure many of you have felt that. Not emptiness, a full, resonant quiet. One of those quiet mercies that asks nothing of you except that you pause long enough to notice your own pulse settling down. And that still happens to me when I walk in the sanctuary. Across its history, First Presbyterian has offered these mercies in practical ways too, serving families uprooted by hardship, educating children when public systems faltered, tending to the hungry when national optimism ran dry, and providing a refuge when Knoxville convulsed with the challenges of race and poverty and modernity. Modernity. You never see that word. None of it's glamorous, but all of it's necessary. A faith community choosing again and again to be a soft place in a sometimes sharp world. Even the graveyard beside the church tells the story. Early pioneers, civic leaders, unknown laborers, they rest shoulder to shoulder, as if the city's memory needed a home as much as its worshipers did. Walk through it and you feel how time itself can be a mercy. It humbles, it steadies. It reminds you that the noise of the present is never the whole story. And that's the thread tying all this together. For more than 230 years, First Presbyterian has practiced kind of spiritual hospitality, a way of saying through wood and stone and human kindness, slow down, you're not alone. Something larger is holding you. This church has stood through Knoxville's transformations not by shouting, but by staying steady, rooted in patient, quiet mercy at the city's heart. And that's where I come into the story. There's a line from Robert Benson, who wrote Living Prayer. He's an author, lives in Nashville. I've heard of him. I highly recommend just about everything he has written. In fact, I correspond with him from time to time, and he writes back. There's a line from Robert Benson that's followed me for years. He talks about the spiritual life arriving, like John 1:16 says, as grace after grace after grace. Not all at once, not in trumpet blasts, just these quiet mercies that gather over time until you realize something in you has been steadied. I didn't know any of that history when I first wandered in around 1990. I was a UT student, carrying the cocktail of ambition, insecurity, chaos. Robert Ferguson had just been pastor. And I remember walking into the sanctuary for the first time and sitting on a back pew, half curious, half wary, and feeling something I hadn't felt before. Certainly not in the Baptist church I grew up in. It was a hush, a presence, the sense that the room itself was breathing on my behalf. And yes, that the very breath of the living God was here in this place. I really felt that. That was my first experience of the church's quiet mercies. They didn't come wrapped in big P theology or spiritual fireworks. They simply settled over me like someone putting a steadying hand on your shoulder when you didn't realize you needed one. This church became the setting for one of the happiest moments of my early life. I married my first wife here in 1992. We stood under this roof, surrounded by hope, friends, and the kind of optimism that only 20-somethings can pull off. And then life, as it tends to do, proved more complicated. My small marketing business grew. That's this place, if you don't know. Southeastern Glass across from Boulder. I chased success the way a man sleepwalking chases a dream. I was moving fast, but not fully awake. The pace consumed me. I laid just about everything I had at the altar of business, including my relationships. My wife and I eventually divorced, and I unraveled more than I understood at the time. I drifted through another marriage that didn't last. I wandered through years where I felt untethered from almost everything, people, purpose, and certainly God. And when I look back on that stretch of my life, the best word is dislocated. I had ambition, but no anchor, momentum, but no meaning, a life full of motion, but running low on breath. And in all those years, I wasn't here. I wasn't sitting in these pews, not even in the back pew. I wasn't praying or being prayed for, at least not knowingly. Yet the church, this church, never stopped its rhythm. It kept praying the daily prayers, singing the weekly hymns, offering its steady presence to anyone who needed a place to land. And even when I had no living prayer in me, First Presbyterian was breathing the prayers for me. And that's what quiet mercy looks like, stretched over decades. It's a place that holds its shape. Not lose yours, like I'm doing now. It's a place that keeps the lights on in the sanctuary, even when you're wandering in the dark. It's a place that remembers who you are when you've forgotten for a while. Coming back to this church recently felt familiar, like stepping into a house where the furniture's been rearranged, but this event is exactly the same. I sat again in the back pew, this time not a college kid, but a man with some road dust on him, and I felt it again. That same steadying hush, that same breath I had borrowed in 1990. And it was as though the church whispered, "Welcome home. You made it. Rest a while." And that to me is the miracle of this place. Not its age or architecture or even its history, even though I love its history and love history in general. It's the way the church quietly accompanies people through the long, uneven arc of their lives. Grace after grace after grace. Not loud, not flashy, just faithful. I stand here today grateful for that faithfulness. Grateful that when my own prayer life went silent, this church kept praying anyway. Grateful that in a world that moves too fast, this place remains a sanctuary, literally, where time slows down and the soul catches up. First Pres has been breathing prayers for me from Knoxville for more than 2 centuries, and I'm grateful it breathed a few for me. Still does. Thanks.